What is up, everyone? It is Odin here. Another Sunday is upon us, and you know what that means. You know what that means. I'm here with some updates. I'm here with some life lessons. I'm here with some happy horse shit to talk about. Updates as far as the world of Broken Compass Comics, updates as far as the world of Odin, and updates as far as just random shit going on. Let's see. First things first, I need to pour myself a drink. I just got back from watching Dungeons and Dragons, the movie. It's a new movie, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I will say there were some things I really loved about the movie. There were some things I absolutely fucking hated about the movie. But all in all, by the end, the ending scenes made up for the things I hated. It was pretty good ending. I liked how they did it. But there were still things I didn't like. Now my daughters said they loved it, and so I went, I'll give it a chance, because I've raised them with a keen eye for movies, to look for horse shit, and they usually find it. But they enjoyed it. They missed the horse shit that I found. Well, they didn't miss it, but they overlooked it. We talked about it. But yeah, anyway, I just got back. I'm going to pour myself a drink. Tonight I'm drinking, I took a chance on 1792 bourbon. I have tried some already, as you can see. I had some last night, and it was pretty damn good. It is, it's got a really decent bite to it, but like the good kind, the purposeful kind, not the cheap kind. But, and not that it was expensive. It wasn't very expensive. It wasn't cheap, but it wasn't expensive. But 1792, apparently, this is Kentucky bourbon. Apparently 1792 was the year that Kentucky was added to the United States. Became part. So, that's what they call it. But I have been enjoying it. It is good stuff. Because it's got that bite, and like scotches sometimes don't have the bite, and that's why I like bourbon a little more. Like some of them do, like the real peaty one, like that Lefroy. I do like that stuff, but it's like, it's so peaty that it's like kind of like built-in bite, you know. But this stuff's pretty good, and I do prefer bourbon. So let's see what's going on. Like I said, I watched Dungeons and Dragons. Hit or miss. The one thing I will say, though, is like, I am much more of a fan of sword and sorcery versus like high fantasy. And I know a lot of people like the high fantasy stuff more than the sword and sorcery stuff. But I was raised on Conan, and to me that was the fantasy type world I liked. Barbarian dudes having to solve the riddle of fighting a wizard when they don't want to. You know, that shit's the best. That's my favorite. And there were some elements in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, but it did seem more fantasy. You know, I get it, like, playing D&D, you can kind of go either way, and it really depends on your personality. But I always pictured, like, you know, a Conan type character whenever I thought like about D&D, and whenever I wanted to create my own character, I'm like, basically I want Conan. That's what I want. And that's why I got Hero Quest when I was a kid. Well, I didn't get it. Actually, that's why I liked it. I remember seeing the box and going, that looks fucking cool. But I didn't even ask for it. I don't think my brother asked for it, but my dad bought us Hero Quest. And then we played a bunch of games with him, and me and my brother and I. It was a blast. But part of what sold me was the cover, or the box art, which is like this barbarian swinging his giant broadsword there right across your face, and it's foreshortened, and he's right in the foreground, and then the other characters are in the background. And I'm like, yeah, this game looks badass. Because he looked like Conan. I mean, they drew him exactly like Conan. So, or like Frazetta's depiction, Buscema's depiction, like somewhere in there, you know. So, yeah. So, speaking of Conan, in a roundabout way, we'll talk Howard. Speaking of Robert Howard, who created Conan, and Kull of Atlantis, of which I did a story, a 6-page story that is going into the back of every Unconditional Shove Volume 1 that anybody orders a physical edition of. And that's the only place it's going to be that I'm pretty sure I'm not going to print it anywhere else. I want to keep it special like that. Some weird special thing like that. But anyway, that reminds me of something I wanted to announce, which is Friday, this coming Friday. My friend Aldous has a show every Friday called The Gutter. The Gutter. And his tagline is like, we all end up in the gutter sometime. Something like that. Everyone ends up in the gutter someday. Something like that. Anyway, now I can say I've proverbially been in the gutter many times. And now I'm going to proverbially be in the gutter on his show. And I may have actually been in a literal gutter once or twice in my life. I don't know for sure. I'd have to think about it. But proverbially I've been there, and here I go again. So I'm old hat. I don't mind. I'll go in the gutter. I don't give a shit. But what he's got going on with that show is really cool. It's a really fun concept because it takes a creator, highlights what they're working on, and then also dives deep into comic book history with a title or a run or a book that represents or similarly represents what the creator that he's spotlighting is working on. So anyway, I am going on this coming Friday. It's 11:15 Eastern Time, 8:15 Pacific, my time. And we're going to go into the gutter. Hang out there for a little while. Enjoy and bask, because that is like I said, it's old hat for me. But he was talking more about Kull of Atlantis when he brought up the history book that we want to study. And fair enough, because what he was like wanting to bring up, I'm like, that is awesome, and it's definitely what I want to talk about. So he knew I did a 6-page Kull of Atlantis story that's going in the back of Unconditional Shove, but he also knew that I did it in a style reminiscent of, not like exactly of course, but like somewhat reminiscent of Hal Foster and his run, his creation of the amazing comic strip Prince Valiant. And the reason it's similar is because there's no voice bubbles. It is purely text and image. Now, I did it quite different, but even as I was working on it, Aldous mentioned that one time when he saw one of the images, and I was like, dude, that's exactly, the thought process. Now, it's my style, and it's modern, so it's not like I'm doing Prince Valiant Part 2. It's, but it has some elements, and the biggest one being there's no voice bubbles. It's just text. And I'm also doing it in poetic meter. So I've shown this like a billion times on here, but I've always been proud of this first page of the book. Especially because I hand did like a logo title, and then I did hand lettering. These are kind of hard to see when it... Not that I want you reading it right now. I want you to read it when you get the book. But that said, like, you either get the book or you don't. Like, this isn't spoilers, and this is not something unless you can find a copy later from someone who wants to sell it that you're going to be able to find anywhere else. I don't want to print it somewhere else. I want it to be just in this book. So if you do like these Kull pages that I share, which again is inspired by Hal Foster, it's definitely not exactly like Hal Foster, but inspired by, Yeah, I did each one a little different, like different kind of scroll, different kind of where the lettering is. Um, and this story is Kull's encounter with the wizard Tuzanthun. And this one was one of my favorite pages. I have to hold it up because it like skews everything. But there is some like reminiscent of Hal Foster stuff, and then this one, I don't want to dwell on this too much because it is kind of spoilery. But like I said, you're either getting the book or you're not, and I don't know if you can even read that. So, or take the time and pause the video if you want to. Go ahead, I guess. But I was very proud of it, and we're going to be highlighting that on The Gutter this Friday. So, Aldous is a great interviewer. Definitely knows his older comics and the history behind comic books, and that's why hitting Hal Foster is just awesome, because I don't think, in my mind, I don't think you can make a Mount Rushmore of comic book importance without adding Hal Foster and what he did with, and I just got this. We'll show it off here. This is just volume 1. I've got 1 through 3, and then there's more even after that. But it's a big hardcover Prince Valiant, volume 1, 1937 to 1938. And this stuff was fascinating. We'll look at it a little bit. But what's interesting to me especially is watching the intensity of his artwork from the beginning to later installments. But what he did to revolutionize the comic strip can't be overstated. So I kind of had a bookmark on this page because I really liked this. He used a little heavier shadow, like on this one here, and I liked when he did that, like here on this. He's working at night and using the silhouette. But these are like little things that we use to this day in making comic books. And he was doing this in 1937, in a comic strip. But I really love this long, elongated panel. And what cracks me up is when they're like 1, 2, 3, 4. They actually put numbers so you know which order to read them in. Which just cracks me up. Like, any savvy comic book reader knows, like, this page is not that hard. You go here, here, here. But it's fine. There were some where it was kind of like, oh, I'm glad they put that on there. I mean, I still knew, but yeah, so going on The Gutter, and we're going to talk a lot. And you know what's interesting? I find this Prince Valiant art and story just fascinating, because it wasn't just his art. His artwork speaks to me in a very, very deep way. But like, the story was quite epic, and flowed very well, in a sense of like, we're constantly building this character. Like, he starts a young man, and he learns and he learns and he learns and he grows. It's just fantastic. But what I found most interesting is at the beginning of the book, it's just a bio on the person of Hal Foster. And then I was like, holy shit, this guy is impressive. Because he was a man. Like, back when men were fucking men. Dude was born in 1892. Moved his wife and daughter to Manitoba, where it's friggin' 40 below, to mine for gold and prospect. And then the story goes that him and his friend rode their bikes 1,000 miles to Chicago so he could get a job working as an illustrator. It's fucking crazy. I'm like, dude, the more I read about it, the more I'm like, you are a man. And like, him and his wife were hunting guides when they were in Manitoba. That's how they made their living before the mine and prospecting took off. I'm like, it's crazy. That's so cool. Like I hear people talk about Frank Frazetta as like a man's man, and he certainly was. And I think there's this stigma that goes with like comic book people or artists and things like that, and it's like, no. Talent in art doesn't mean that you're going to be some pretentious turtleneck wearing fairy, you know? Like, there's been some badass motherfuckers that have done some great art. And I think of Frank Frazetta as a very manly man, but the more I read about Hal Foster, the more I'm like, dude, that guy was a fucking man. Yeah. And he was like a subdued man. You know, like he wasn't like overt. He was just like badass under the surface. You know, like he didn't have to prove anything. And I like that a lot. Very cool. So anyway, that's we're gonna dig very deep into the story of Hal Foster and Prince Valiant. So influential to everything that came after it. And all the way up until now when I'm doing Kull of Atlantis and I'm saying I want to kind of get a Prince Valiant kind of feel. And even thinking that going in, and I'm like, you realize that was from 1937, you know, are you going to speak to a modern audience with that? And I'm going, fuck yeah, well, I mean, you know, I'm going to add some modern sensibilities, but also there's timeless shit in that. His draftsmanship and his cartooning and everything is so good. And his story was so epic. It's like, it's timeless. And that's why, again, he deserves a place on the Mount Rushmore of comic books, you know. And I mean, that it would just add, it would be all these people eventually, but he's got to have a spot. So anyway, that's this Friday. As you can see, this page that I was working on, I didn't get much further on. It's been a busy week. And part of the reason it's been a busy week is sending this bad boy out to so many people. So many people. So, I've already shipped all the U.S. orders out. They're all gone out. Several people have already got them, which is awesome. This is my copy, or my main copy. I did get this one from James also. As you can see here. He said, to Odin, this was the first warts and all. #1 off the press. And he sent it to me. What a guy. But that one's got like, you know, trim issues or whatever that they had to work out. You know, it was the first example page off the press. So. But this was so freaking good. Let me find like primate. And then it's got the Cthulhu, black and white in the back. Drawn by the awesome big boy Robo. Like this last page is insanity. Just love it. Yeah, like this. Look at that. One of my favorite. That is too awesome. And the split, as we call it. Great stuff. The whole book, and I'm sure people are going to love it. I thoroughly enjoyed reading it. It was a lot of fun. And then this one here. The Meanwhile Back in Abilene interlude page. Meanwhile Back in Abilene. Let's see if we can do it. There it is. Meanwhile Back in Abilene. So I spent a lot of my week, you know, getting these out the door. Making sure everybody got them. And then Meanwhile Back in Abilene, on my driving and singing videos, that is a Roger Miller song that I did, and I referenced Magnificent Bastards because I'd seen that page a long time ago. Just James sharing pages with me, and he's like, look at this. And he goes, that would be a cool song for you to do on your driving and singing videos. I'm like, you are not wrong, my friend. So, because I love Roger Miller, I'd already done some Roger Miller. And so I did Meanwhile Back in Abilene. And then recently, I sang Gordon Lightfoot, Sundown, in honor of Gordon Lightfoot, who passed away recently. Rest in peace. The great Gordon Lightfoot. And in that song, and I talk about this on the driving and singing video, that song is about being with, like in love with, in a relationship with a crazy ass woman. And I even joke about it on the video. It's like, it's relatable. It's too fucking relatable. Because the more I knew that about the song, once I learned that about the song, I went, damn, this song hits. It hits a little hard. Because I've been there. There's this like mindset, this like it's kind of like an uneasiness about the relationship, and you're always kind of like waiting for the next shoe to drop. You know, like what fucking insane thing is going to happen next. And I joke about it on the video, like it's a lot of fun. There is a level of excitement with crazy broads that is, it's so much fun. But it's like you're constantly frustrated and you're constantly pulling your fucking hair out, constantly in a battle. But you're also constantly, it's a whirlwind. You're constantly like having fun too. So David dated several. For all the good and bad, like I will say the ones that I dated though, they were like the epitome of work hard, play hard. They had incredible work ethic because they were this like fucking intense ladies. So when they got a job and they were dedicated to it, they went at it. But then, you know, in the evening it was time to like party, and they were like, fucking, let's party. And I'm like, yeah, all right. You know, like I do, like, I love that shit. But especially like doing like comic book art and stuff, you're like, I want an evening where I can just sit and draw, you know, like I want to fucking go out tonight, you know, I just want to draw. I just want to sit here and draw half my life. I know it sounds boring, but then you're also like, you get into that Gordon Lightfoot territory where you're like, I don't know what the fuck you're up to if you go out and have fun while I sit at home and draw. Because that was the thing. He would stay home, write music, and she would go like day drink all the time. The woman he was with that he wrote the song about. And just be up to no good. And there's no trust in that. And like that's the thing when you're dating a crazy girl, like it's really hard to have any kind of trust. You're like, I've seen how carried away you get with a moment. And that's untrustworthy. You know, it's just untrustworthy. You get too carried away with a moment. It means like some really attractive guy, you could get carried away with that moment. Like, you know, the same thing women accuse men of. And it's like, I know myself, I would never, but, you know, some people have that tendency to just get carried away with a moment. So, it makes it hard to trust. And I mean, I've had that trust violated, you know, as a younger man in relationships and stuff. You're like, oh, that was weird. And then you look back and you're like, that wasn't something you wanted anyway. It was just in the moment it felt good and it was fun. But you're probably better off that it fell apart, you know? So that's my thoughts on crazy women. But that's why the song Sundown is kind of like I said, relatable. Let's see. What else? I have not gotten through season 5. Still have not gotten through season 5 of Twilight Zone. Season 5 is when they return back to the sitcom length format, the half-hour short story format. There is something that I really like about the condensed writing. But that said, I'm halfway through season 5, and there's some real stinkers in there. Which I was kind of hoping that season 5 wouldn't have that. Like, it would be like... So I've watched it before, and I forgot the forgettable episodes. I remember the very memorable ones, and there are definitely those, But before I do that... Hold on, I want to show you this. This shit cracked me up. Let's see. How do we do this? There we go. Yeah, go here, and this shit cracks me up. Let's get back to the beginning. This was a fight in a bar. I think it was in like Rhode Island or something. Let's see if I can find the... Alright. See bottles flying. Fucking fighting going on everywhere. There's a part here. People falling, people slipping, tables, chairs be flying. There it is. I knew I saw a titty. And this is like a new thing, because I follow a bunch of Twitter pages that show like street fights and shit like that. But like, it seems like a common thing in these, like, if women are involved, that for whatever reason their tits like end up coming out. Like, she just enters the foray with her. And that is a fairly nice looking tit. It might be fake. I can't tell for sure. But if it's real, that's pretty nice looking tit. Just saying. And then it like blends in with the other girl's arm as it swings around. You can't tell what's what. Look at those chairs. Fucking bottles flying. There's this big guy who enters the scene here in a little bit. This big bald guy comes in. There he is. He's carrying like a high chair or something. I don't know what the fuck he's carrying. But he takes one to the face here in a sec. Right there. That chair coming down. Boom! And then next thing you know, he wants nothing to do with all this noise. Like, hit him on the bridge of the nose or the eye. Yeah. Well, she put her tits away. Yeah. Some decency. She put them away. I don't know. I love watching this shit. I don't know why I'm fascinated. Partially because just the social awareness aspect. You know, like you see these you see enough of these like street fights, and you see the posture, you see the heightened agitation in the people, and it's important to have situational awareness, and I try to teach my kids this. It's like, pay attention. Like, if it feels like the shit's gonna go down, it might very well. And you don't want to be in that foray. Like, why anybody is involved in that? Like, now I get it, especially as a young man, and if it's my friends, and honestly, in those moments, I always try to be like right in the fucking mix. But as I became a dad, then I was like, it's more a mindset of protection, and you know, it's just a whole different mentality seeing that. But I remember before being a dad, you know, whenever the shit went down, I kind of wanted to be right up in it. I did want to be one of those people taking a chair to the face. I didn't really, but it felt like. But anyway, let's talk Twilight Zone. Let's go through some episodes real quick. Because, like I said, there were some stinkers. In Praise of Pip, episode number 1. That one wasn't bad, and the acting was good. It's the one actor, I can't think of his name. He's been on a lot of Twilight Zone episodes. He did a really good job playing like a bookie. He was pretty good. Not the worst. And then Steel, episode 2. Not a great episode, but man, the acting from Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin makes an appearance. This is his second appearance in Twilight Zone. And I love Lee Marvin. He's always so good. Like, he's commanding, just powerful. And he even plays like kind of like a less commanding personality. He's like a boxing manager, but in the future they've banned human boxing, so it's like robots. And the people who played the robots did a good job, but he has to pretend to be a robot because his robot fighter is an old model. It's all run down, and he's got a big fight, and he's like, it'd be better for me to step in. So, not the best episode, but man, he gave a great performance. Episode 3, quite possibly, depending on who you ask, and I would say definitely for season 5, the most famous episode of Twilight Zone. But to some people, probably the most famous episode of Twilight Zone ever, because it features William Shatner. It's Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, which is a classic episode. There's something on the wing, something. Which I only quote Jim Carrey when I quote that episode for whatever reason, just because it was too funny. But that's the thing. People make fun of... it's always been a joke to make fun of William Shatner's delivery and his bad acting, but he's not a bad actor. He's actually very good. And this episode, he shows it. He's actually a really good actor. And it was one of my favorite episodes. You know, he's on a flight in a storm, and he sees this teddy bear looking furry guy out on the wing who basically looks like the bear giving the guy head in The Shining, so for whatever that's worth. But what the episode meant, and then they redid it on the Twilight Zone movie with John Lithgow, and that was really good too. So that was an excellent episode. Classic, but classic for a reason. One of the best. A kind of stopwatch. That one was pretty lame. The Last Night of a Jockey. This one was not that great of an episode, but it's hilarious because it stars Mickey Rooney playing a jockey because he's tiny. He's a little short guy, a fucking midget, and all the short jokes throughout the episode just crack me up. Because people don't do that nowadays. Not the best episode, but Mickey Rooney. And I always think of Dana Carvey's impression. I was the greatest actor in the world. Boom, the world. If you never saw Dana Carvey's Mickey Rooney on Saturday Night Live. The greatest actor in the world, you hear me? Boom, the world. The Living Doll. That one's really good. And part of the reason it's really good is because Telly Savalas does a great performance as an abusive stepfather. Like, the most terrifying thing about that is that it felt so real. Like, he wasn't like abusive, like he's just smacking around his wife and his stepdaughter. But you could just sense it. It was this overbearing, like, fuck you, you do what I say kind of mentality. And you could just sense the abuse. They don't really show it. But the girl gets a doll called Taki Tina. And Taki Tina, the one line she delivers is, "I'm Taki Tina, and I love you." Except when he's holding the doll, she's like, "I'm Taki Tina, and I think I hate you." And he's like, "What, you stupid doll?" And he's like, "I'm Taki Tina, and I'm going to kill you." Classic episode, but man, like I said, the anybody who like grew up in that environment probably should have like a trigger warning, because it feels very like you really do feel this is a house. You're peering into this house. In that time, it was a little more common too, like just that overbearing stepfather. It was really well done. And young Telly Savalas, pre-Kojak. No sucker. No lollipop. Old Man in the Cave is an excellent episode. The concept I don't want to talk about because it's like so deep. It's a lot to talk about, but I will just say, if you are watching season 5 of Twilight Zone, watch Old Man in the Cave. Pretty good episode. That one, oh, that was a young Robert Mitchum, I think. Let me look that up. I think that was a young Robert Mitchum, which is weird. I just now thought of that. Hold on. Old Man in the Cave. Oh, not Robert Mitchum. James Coburn. Yeah, and he was great. Played a very unlikable person, but he did a great job. Which is kind of the style for James Coburn. And then they hit this stretch of some pretty bad ones. Uncle Simon was not the greatest. Night Call, though, I will say that's, until the ending, it's the most terrifying episode of Twilight Zone ever. It's an old lady, keeps getting calls in the middle of the night, and she's like restless, and she gets these calls, and at first it's just like white noise and static, and you're like, what the fuck? And she's acting her ass off. She's doing great. This old lady, perfect. And then you start hearing voices, and she's like, who is this? You know, and nobody believes her and everything. But then it's the not knowing that makes it so intense and terrifying. And then at the end, they give the twist, and you're like, eh. And it's not bad. It's just, it relieves all of the tension. Like, the tension just goes away. And so all that terrifyingness is just put at ease, which is fine. And the writing was good. There's just no way to end it without going like way over the top or making it like they did, which is the right call. No pun intended. So, Night Call is a great episode, but it's like I said, it's truly terrifying all the way till the end. And the end's twist, they're like, play the heightened music, like, and you're like, ah, yeah, I get it. And it's not bad. It's just, there's no way to end it without losing that tension. Probe 7, Over and Out. Not a bad one. Not that great, actually. 7th is Made Up of Phantoms. This one's about a small platoon. No, not platoon. A small group of National Guard. They're like on maneuvers out where the Battle of Little Bighorn happened, and Custer's Last Stand and all that. That one's not bad. It's fun to watch. It's just a fun episode, but it's not anything special. And here's where they get some stinkers for like a good stretch. A Short Drink from a Certain Fountain. That one's just frustrating to watch, and it's not that good. Not even worth explaining the premise. 90 Years Without Slumbering. That one's not bad. It's just not good either. Ring-a-Ding Girl is actually pretty good. Like, I thought it was going to suck until midway, and then towards the end, I'm like, oh, this was a great episode. But you do have to get through, like, a bunch of shit where you're like, is this going to be another stinker? Because you just watched 2 stinkers in a row. You Drive. That one's not bad. That's where, like, the car, like, has a soul, basically. Like, the guy hit and runs a kid on a bicycle, and then his car haunts him. Like, the kid dies and his soul goes in the car or something. I don't know. It was alright. Not the greatest. Number 12, Looks Just Like You. That one had a great message, but the actual episode, not that great. The message is a very nonconformist message, which I love when they do that on the Twilight Zone. They're cautionary tales. They're cautionary tales against fucking the evils of communism, and they're very real things. They're like, here's a dystopian future that this is what this shit leads to. It's conformist. It's destroy individuality. And it's definitely a good episode for that. But the episode itself beyond that, like there's definitely some truth bombs that are important and timeless and timely, but overall, like again, it's the message is great, the execution and the story not so great. The Long Morrow is like the opposite. Like the twist and the episode are pretty generic, but the execution is extremely well done because it's a love story, and the couple involved are very believable, and especially black and white. It feels like Casablanca or Gone with the Wind or something. Like you could feel the actual tension and love that's going on. So conceptually not as cool. It's still really good. I think Long Morrow is actually a really good episode, but the self-improvement of Salvador Ross, that one's not that great. Like the message again is pretty good, but it's so labored. It's like a morality story, but the morality like is so obvious that you're like, okay, you don't have to do a whole, like it could have been like a 5 minute and get the same point across. And then the last one I watched, because I only got halfway through, is episode 19, Black Leather Jackets, which this one started off cool, and I was picturing this Lost Boys, like kind of like a Twilight Zone Lost Boys kind of thing, and then they kind of went into the twist, and it was just like what kind of like a convoluted mess, and just really tropey in a lot of ways. And it was almost like the whole biker gang element that you thought it was starting off with was just kind of like throwaway and not that entertaining. So I'm hoping, so that's episode 19, and there's 36 episodes, so I've got 15 more to go. I'm hoping, or 17 more to go. Hoping that there's some better ones, because there's a lot of stinkers in this first part of the season 5. Again, there's some really good ones, and some ones with some good execution, but all in all. So, anyway, that's about it. I'm going to wrap this video up because I've been going long, and real quick, though, we will say, like I mentioned before, all of Magnificent Bastards are fulfilled. They're all in the mail. Plenty of people have already received them. So that's awesome, and I feel good about that. And then Shove is not far behind. We have I have a promise. The lettering will be done by the end of the month. And then I'll probably keep the campaign open maybe 2 weeks after that. So probably 2 weeks into June, we will close down the Unconditional Shove campaign. And like I said, and it is worth mentioning, if you like this Kull of Atlantis story and you want to read it and enjoy it in comic book form, you have to jump on the Unconditional Shove campaign and get your copy of Unconditional Shove, because it's a 6-page story in the back of Shove, and there's only one place it'll be printed, and it's in this campaign. And I've talked about it before. If we do a reprint of Shove Volume 1, it's not going to have the Kull story in it. So, even if that's all you want, you have to jump on it. But we'll keep it up for 2 weeks into June, I'm guessing, while it's printing, while we're finalizing everything, and then while we get ready to fulfill the printed versions. So that's the update on Shove, which is, like I said, like right there on the threshold of being finished. And then the other thing James and I are working on is Kill Them Dead. I'll share the image I always share, which again, it makes his legs look all little and itty bitty if I don't prop it up properly because of the angle of my drafting table, which we're very excited about. The super ambitious project, lots of shit going on with it. And our sign up page, we need more sign ups so we can feel really confident when it comes to the launch date. And yes, you do have to create an account to sign in or to sign up. You have to create a Kickstarter account if you don't have one. But it costs you nothing, and if you do, you're set up to do sign-ups and backing on Kickstarter whenever you want. So I'll drop the link to that. I'll drop the link to Shove. I'll drop the link to The Gutter, which I'll be on this Friday, 11:15 Eastern Time, 8:15 Pacific. And yeah, and I'm getting really tired and ready for bed. So it is time to wrap up this video. And I don't know that I have any deep philosophical talk to end with. Oh, yes I do. Well, it's basically what I tell my kids. And now I'm telling adults. And I'm going, you should know this, but and hopefully you do. Maybe it's just a reminder. Like, I love hearing like sermons and lectures. Like, I can sit there and listen to that shit all day long. So that's probably why I do these like motivational philosophical talk. But recently I had to have this talk with one of my daughters about the voice inside that tells you when you're doing something wrong. You know, you call it your conscience. You could call it, you know, if you're Christian, you'd call it the Holy Spirit. You know, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. It's that thing, your better self, your better judgment. That thing inside of you when you're about to do something stupid and it says, this is stupid, don't do this. And the point is not only that you have that there and that you should listen to it, of course you should. But the more you ignore it, the fainter it gets. Until you're just not hearing better judgment anymore. You're not hearing that voice of reason, that protection over decision making. And you've just been ignoring it so much that you don't hear it anymore. And next thing you know, you're lost and you keep just making bad choices. And it's a bad place and it's a hard place to climb out of. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been there in my life, you know, and I joked about the gutter and being in the proverbial gutter. That's how you get there. In that proverbial gutter. Like, going on the proverbial gutter with Aldous is like a really cool place. But the other one I'm talking about, it's not a cool place. And it's frightening, and it takes a really strong bucking the trends of what you've been doing for so long to get there, and showing some discipline, and it takes quite a bit of time to get out of there, especially if it's talking about lies, because that's another one I tell my daughters. I'm like, if you get away with a lie, then you think you got away with it, so the next one is easier, and then the next one you get away with, then the next one's so much easier, and before you know it, you're a professional liar. You're willing to lie anytime, any place. And then the next step after that is being caught and ensnared by the web of all your fucking lies. You don't know if you told this person this or this person this. And it does. It just wraps you up like a web. And that is a hard hole to get out of. Because nobody trusts you. And the worst part about it is when you get to those moments and you don't have anyone else around because everybody's turned their back on you because they're like, you're a fucking liar, you're untrustworthy, and you have no one to look to but yourself, but you're such a liar that you can't even trust yourself. And trust me, you're going to be in that position in life somewhere along the line where no one else to turn to but yourself. But if you can't even trust yourself in those moments, you're in a really bad place. So I've hammered that idea home with my daughters, and they listen more. I mean, they're still young. They have to learn. They have to like go through trial and error, but for the most part, they're pretty phenomenal about like their decision making. Even in their most rebellious way, they still know not to go down this like, I'm gonna challenge authority, I'm gonna do my own thing, but I'm not gonna go here. And that makes the dad proud so far anyway, you know what I mean. I pains me to think that they're gonna have to learn so many lessons, because that's just what life is. But they are pretty phenomenal. So anyway, that is thus endeth the lesson for today. It's pay attention to that voice and don't lie. That's it. I mean, seriously, if you can do those two things, you're going to be far better off than most people, I think, in this world. Just on an integrity level. So that's the final thing. I don't know where you're at in life, but I hope that you are facing everything with integrity, with kindness and compassion, balanced with power and integrity. You don't take any guff from any swine, but you also look to lift your brother and sister out of the gutter, knowing that, but by the grace of God, you could be there yourself, which is a very true thing. I think about that a lot. Everybody, we're all just like one bad decision away from total gutter. It's kind of like that one Twilight Zone episode when he did the hit and run on the kid in his car. It's like he seemed like he's a pretty good guy, but he decides not to stay and check on the kid and make sure he's okay. He's like, he gets freaked out in the moment. He goes, I accidentally hit a kid on a bike, but I'm late for work and everything's crazy, and he just drives away. And then he's haunted the rest of the episode. One bad decision. One bad decision. And that's the thing, like, you don't want to ever be responsible for hitting somebody. But if you do, it's that kind of thing. It's the integrity that says, I have to check and make sure this person's okay and do whatever I can to help them. That's what you should be doing. So anyway, that's all I got for this week. Let's see. I don't have any cool way to end it either. So I'm just gonna say, hope you're doing awesome. Until next time, it's Odin here, and we'll see you.